Welcome to Crooners and Coffeeshops. My name is Heather. Today I'm here with Darian Zahedi to discuss his solo debut, as well as being an active member of a few other bands and musical projects, and just overall creative artistry. Darian, would you like to kind of give us a little bit of introduction as to how you got started in music?
Sure. Well, I guess that question could be answered many different ways. But I got started playing the guitar because I was obsessed with rock and roll bands when I was a kid, and I wanted so badly to be able to recreate sounds that I was hearing, whether it was Nirvana or classic stuff like the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. You know, the more that I fell in love with music, the more I had this sort of will to figure out how it was being done and to make those sounds myself. So that's how I started playing guitar when I was about 10. And then I sort of like, as soon as I could play guitar, started bands with my friends, and I've kind of been doing that ever since.
Yeah. And so you were actually productive during this quarantine period with the creation and release of your debut single, Dancing. And I love it. It's so fun. So congratulations on that. I wanted to kind of ask you, like, what made you think that now was the quote unquote right time to finally delve into some solo work?
I think the answer would be, if not now, then when? You know what I mean? It's not, if nothing else, I mean, the pandemic's been terrible, and sort of like world has been on fire, and it's been a really crazy time, a really crazy year. But I always try and look at, try and find a positive in situations. And I think the only kind of positive thing that come out of quarantine was all of a sudden time to do things. And, do things maybe we were putting off or didn't have the time to do before. So as a musician, you know, I start so many musical ideas that get abandoned along the way, whether it's because I get sick of them, I lose interest in them, they stop inspiring me, I lose my inspiration halfway through, or the song just starts pissing me off and I basically throw it in the garbage. So I sort of took this time as a challenge to stick something through to the end without calling on my friends to help me, which, you know, a lot of times with musical idea, I'll get it to a certain point, and if it's people on people, I'll send the idea to John and he'll help me finish it, or he'll come up with a whole new thing and make it a song, and it'll be a people on people song. Or I'll send it to Nick and John, John is in CRX and People on People. So I'll send it to Nick or John or both of them and be like, here's an idea. I can't finish it. But in this case, it was like, I'm going to see this one through on my own because I've got time, and all I have to do is not quit on it. So that's what I did. Even when it really like pissed me off or I felt stuck, I would go for a walk, put on headphones, listen to it, figure out what it was that was bothering me, and then come back and try something new.
And I love that you mentioned, you know, the whole time aspect. We didn't have enough of it. And then all of a sudden we were gifted all of this unsurmountable amount of time that we, you know, have a love-hate relationship. But I do feel like it has been a really good time for people that are creative, or people that, you know, like you said, were putting off things that they're like, I don't need to do it right now, or kind of holding on to crutches in terms of like how you would consult with your other bandmates on projects, and you wanted to do all of this on your own. And it's very commendable, you know?
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like downplay the benefit and luxury of having musical partners that I'm blessed to be able to work with, for lack of a better word. But it is nice sometimes to just see something through on your own and have it just be, you know, you. So, you know, it's great to collaborate, but it's also something special to be able to make something all on your own.
Absolutely. You love your friends, but you also value your alone time.
Exactly. Exactly.
And speaking of your collaborators, you're also an active member of CRX, like you mentioned, as well as People on People. How would you say that creating music for each project is similar or different from that of each other, including your solo work, apart from, you know, you're working with yourself and seeing it through on your own, and you have collaborators for the other ones?
Yeah. I think they're similar in the way that usually a song just starts as like an idea you hear in your head. Maybe it's just a beat or a riff or something. And at that point, it's like anyone's game. You know what I mean? And a lot of the time isn't until I sit down and start messing with it and, put the beat down and bring out a guitar or a synth and start putting stuff together that I say to myself, oh, this sounds like a People on People song. I'm going to follow it down that path. Or this sounds like a CRX song. I'm going to follow it down that path. Or with dancing, it was sort of always kind of felt like in between or neither of those things, which is why I kind of picked it to be my own song. But sometimes I do hear something in my head and I say to myself, oh my God, that sounds like a CRX riff. I got to go make this demo for CRX and send it to the guys. But I think it's similar in the way that it all just comes into your head and then you follow it down the path and see where it leads you, and I'm lucky to have these different avenues to sort of give the finished product to.
Absolutely. And a lot of your musical works pull from so many different genres on a sonic scale. Like, I took the time to try to listen to not only CRX, but also People on People and then dancing as well. And there's just so much genre blending, at least for my ears. I value when artists like you do try their best to blend genres instead of just thinking, this is what I need to do, I feel like a lot of it's changing, especially now on the modern scale for modern music. Do you think that at some point in the musical time scale that there's going to be a cease of the specification of genre in music?
That's a very cool idea. And I don't know, but it reminds me of this. I like jazz a lot. I listen to a lot of jazz records. And there's this Duke Ellington record from the 70s, so a later record for him called Afro-Eurasian Eclipse. And he basically starts the record by talking and giving this sort of speech about how some professor had done this research about how in the future all the sort of races and cultures will just blend together, you know what I mean? And it's this inevitable thing where we would literally kind of like all become one, for lack of a better word. And then the record is like proceeds to be this kind of like funk jazz hybrid with sort of like African influences, Asian influences, and all this stuff. And I think that was very sort of ahead of its time, because you think to like a band like the Talking Heads, who started out as like a punk band playing at CBGB's. And then they decided to they started listening to Fela Kuti records, and then their music completely changed into this whole sort of groundbreaking thing that, it just blended genres, and it was like Afrobeat punk, and introduced that kind of sound to a whole new audience, and sort of changed the sonic palette of punk music, basically. Or I think of like Rihanna covering Tame Impala, which was such a cool left field thing that was so unexpected, and it opened a door to the whole different sonic palette in pop music and hip hop. It's like the whole sort of indie psych rock sound has all of a sudden been pulled into the mainstream. And I think basically what I'm saying is diversity is always your friend in music and always makes for interesting combinations that change things. So yeah, I think that blending of genres sort of creates new ones, if that makes sense, instead of blurring everything together. I feel like now we have like a psych hip-hop pop music genre that kind of exists. And I think that it's like a family tree, that starts with the great-great-great-great-grandfather and great-great-great-great-grandmother. And then as it goes, it like spreads more and more branches and leaves. And I feel like that's kind of what happens with music. It's like everything starts interbreeding with itself and each other. And you have all these new genres that are born out of crossing genres. And I think more than it all blending into one, it would more likely turn into infinity, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
That was a very long answer.
I actually really like the iteration of the family tree that you just said. I never really pictured it that way, but now that you went into detail about how it can actually work, I was like, That actually makes a whole lot of sense with, having your main original quote unquote genre and then all the branches and such until, it becomes the root and then all of it's together.
Exactly. And then
Yeah,
maybe it catches fire and burns to the ground and a whole new forest springs up. You know,
absolutely.
what that metaphor means exactly, I don't know. But
We're going to take it in a positive scale.
there you go.
Those are the fires that we want. We don't want actual forest fires.
Very true.
California
Actually,
already suffers enough every year.
very true. We've been burning and hurting, and we need some relief in our state. We need some relief in our country. We need some relief in the world. Hopefully, that is on the horizon.
Yes, I hope so as well. And, I wanted to go into a little bit more on your other artistic endeavors. You're also a very talented photographer. You do like portraits and stills and such, and they're amazing. And I'm jealous and need to work on my photography skills here.
Oh, thank you.
You're inspiring me to use the rest of quarantine to work on photography.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, that in itself is a reason for me to make photography or music. Because the reason I make music and the reason I take pictures is because I was inspired by other musicians and other photographers, and I wanted to create something that gave me that same feeling. So that in and of itself is like a tree. It's like the cycle continues. You know what I mean? If you can inspire people to create, that's I think one of the main purposes of creation.
Absolutely. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, before COVID happened, when, we were able to see people without having a yardstick in front of us, how were you kind of balancing your time between, like, your musical endeavors, your photographic endeavors, as well as your personal life?
That's a good question. And to be honest, like it's something I'm still trying to figure out how to do. But the way I use the two sort of different artistic endeavors that I have with the photography and the music is, with any creative endeavor, you hit walls or you get frustrated or you get sick of it and it goes away. But when those moments happen, I sort of use that as an opportunity to pivot to the other thing instead of just letting creativity like die. You know what I mean? So sometimes I get really frustrated with music, being like, I just don't have anything right now. I keep trying for the song and it's going nowhere. So I'll just turn to creating some photo stuff for the next few days or the next few weeks or the next few months. And I think for me, it's nice to have these two things to bounce between when one of them sort of is being elusive. And then in terms of like balancing that with my personal life, there's still a time every day where I'm just kind of, especially with the pandemic, where I'm just like, my mind is just done and I want to like learn to cook something new and make a drink and chill out and put on a jazz record. So always kind of find time to live my life. And pandemic and living with my girlfriend. So we sort of like, neither one of us could cook that much before the pandemic, and we took it as a sort of opportunity to also learn how to do that, to cook. So
It's a very useful skill to have.
exactly. And it's really fun and therapeutic. And then also you have to eat. So it's good to know how to make things that are good to eat.
Yes.
It's like one of the most practical skills I think you can have. And I know a lot of people, like, it almost feels cliche to talk about it now because I know a lot of people like, quote unquote, learn to cook during quarantine. I wonder when we get out this whole thing, how it will look in the real world. But I also think it doesn't matter. It's like you've learned to feed yourself on a more elevated level. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are restaurants that do certain dishes that maybe you can do, but it's just not going to be as good. So support local businesses.
Yes, if I can give a shout out, my friend has a restaurant called Roberta's in Culver City, right by you, and it's one of my favorite restaurants. And so there was, things that I know that I'll never be able to make anywhere near as good as they are at Roberta's. Certain pastas and pizzas, and they have this amazing natural wine, selection. So that's been my main sort of quarantine COVID time restaurant that I sort of still would go to and felt okay about being at because they have such a big outdoor area and it feels really safe. But also, it's like, yeah, good to go and eat stuff that you can't make for yourself. And it's super special thing.
Absolutely. And if you could give your younger self any advice in regards to what you've experienced within music or within your life in general, what advice would you give him? Apart from learn to cook, which you ended up doing.
I would say always try and remind yourself to push boundaries, explore new things, explore new subject matters, new sounds, new imagery. But sort of in contrast to that, I think the overall advice would be don't overthink things. Don't try to make things perfect. Don't be afraid to fuck up royally. Just throw yourself into it and make stuff and move on.
Words of wisdom. I would seriously tell my younger self the same exact thing.
Yeah, I think it's good advice. I think you can still tell yourself that now and benefit from it.
Right. That it would be unfortunate if my older self didn't learn that when I was younger. I'd probably just yell at my older self if that ended up happening.
Yeah.
But it's always a good daily reminder for sure.
Yeah. You can put it on the whiteboard or crochet it into a little picture and hang it on the wall.
Right? I think that might be my next cross-stitch project. I'm inspired now.
That is the time.
Yes. And what do you hope that your audience will take away from your music?
I would say, sort of like I was saying earlier, that I can just kind of pass inspiration along. Music is such an important aspect of everybody's life, I think, not just people who make it. I think it helps people through difficult times of all varying degrees and intensities. And it can also just be the backdrop for like a good time. It doesn't have to be too serious. It can just help you have a good time and relax and kind of get out of your head for a minute. So if I can be a part of any of those things and contribute any of those things to somebody else's life, that's really a cool feeling. And with photography too, it's like about creating something that's beautiful or interesting that you can hang on a wall or that will inspire someone to want to create. Also, I think that's the best you can do.
Yes, definitely. What other big exciting things should we be expecting from you, whether it be in music or in photography?
I also have this project called Cadeaux, which is Cadeaux, with my friend Brianna Lane, where she sings. It's, for lack of a better term, like kind of an indie pop project. We were talking about my genre-spanning endeavor that adds another element. So there's that, which I'm really excited about. And I'm working on a video for dancing right now, which should be done pretty soon. And I'm writing music with CRX and taking lots of pictures with the idea of hopefully doing a show one of these days, whenever that happens.
Awesome. So here at Crooners and Coffeeshops, we like to support our local coffee businesses. Even during a pandemic, it's still very important. I went to the original Brooklyn Water Bagel. It's out by LAX and Westchester area. I got the Koopsta. They actually had like a really cool infusion, like a coffee brew infusion of vanilla and hazelnut and Kahlua. That was really good. But the ice cubes were made of coffee. So if you have if you need to be productive all day, I would say Koopstas are a very good option because you are going to avoid having your coffee watered down.
Genius.
Yes, I know. I'm going to have to try that here. Darian, do you have any shout outs for any local coffee shops, any cafes?
Yeah, I like this place near me on Robertson called Assembly. I mean, I used to go there as a hang, but now they do to go. And their coffee's really good. Their matcha's really good. They have really good treats, really good gluten-free treats. And it's just a good vibe.
Awesome. Well, Darian, thank you for joining us today. It was awesome to get to speak with you and get to know more about you and multiple artistic aspects.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, where can everyone find you online?
let's see. I mean, on Spotify and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff with my own stuff and People on People, Cadeau, CRX. It's all on all the streamers. It's all on Bandcamp. And then if you want any updates, you can follow my Instagram, which I have one for just my main one, which is just my name. And then there's one that I have for my photography, but I don't have any websites at the moment. That's my next quarantine project, is making actual websites.
Awesome.
Still use those.
Yes, we definitely can. Like I said, Darian, thank you for joining us today. I know you're out of West Hollywood. I know it's a little bit hotter than it is here in Culver City, but we're wishing you lots of positive vibes, lots of good luck with your musical and other creative endeavors on all aspects, and health and safety for you. We're still in a pandemic and we want you to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much. Same to you.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Stay safe out there and stay caffeinated.